Good afternoon. I'm Pastor Devin Krause. I have the honor of serving here at this wonderful church, and what a joy it is for us to gather for the 21st annual Poetry and Organ Concert. And in case you didn't know it, Dr. Tom is celebrating 50 years with us, and right? What a gift he has been to this congregation. And although he is retiring at the end of the year, we're hoping to enjoy many more of these organ recitals for years to come. And we're so glad to have Christiane Chase joining us with her poetry skills. She has a background in theater and directing over 50 plays and musicals. She received awards for acting and directing and was named YWCA's list of 100 influential women, which is pretty amazing too, right? Can we give it up for Christiane? For some time, Christiane has been interested in theopoetics, which in a nutshell is a way of exploring the confluence of poetry, theology, and postmodern philosophy. And she says, I believe we experience God through creativity, whether looking at a painting or a sculpture, watching a play, or listening to music. Collaborating with Dr. Tom put together this concert is one of my greatest joys. Dr. Tom completed a bachelor's in music with an emphasis in organ and a bachelor's in theater from Friends University, a master's in music theater from Texas Christian University, and a doctorate dual degree in organ and harpsichord performance from North Texas State. In other words, he really knows his stuff. And the concert will be played on the Rogers Reuter digital pipe organ that was installed in the sanctuary here in 1972, shortly after Dr. Tom joined the staff. The organ has 96 ranks, the equivalent of 6,296 pipes, a digital console, 4 keyboards, an antiphonal organ in the balcony. In other words, it's quite an instrument. The congregation recently honored Dr. Tom in September by dedicating the organ to him as a part of his 50-year celebration. And I've told Dr. Tom he needs to hang on to his keys, because as far as I'm concerned, the organ has his name on it now, and we expect him to come and play it and get ready for many of these recitals. After this recital, there will be a reception in honor of Dr. Tom's retirement at the end of the year, and I hope that you can join us out in the Great Hall as we just share our thanks and appreciation for all of his gifts. Music and poetry play such an important part of our lives. There's something about the songs of this time of year in preparation for the long-awaited, expected Jesus, and the ways that we're called to prepare the way of the Lord. This is a story that's told throughout the ages, a story that is still changing hearts and minds, much the way organ music has played an essential role in the church all the way back to the 3rd century before Christ. It's mind-blowing when you consider that the organ dates before Christ, much like Isaiah prophesying about the coming Messiah. The organ has played the tune and served as a beacon of hope, peace, joy, and love as we prepare the way for the Lord. Let's pray. Lord, we come to you tonight and give thanks for the melody, the song that has been playing for so many years, long before we arrived on the scene, and the ways that we get to be a part of the melody tonight, to be inspired and to become an inspiration like Dr. Tom and Christiane, who come to share with us the gift of song, the gift of poetry. Use them. Fill this place with your presence and remind us of the goodness of who we are because of you. Amen.
From Paul's first letter to the Thessalonians, the 5th chapter. Rejoice always. Pray without ceasing. Give thanks in all circumstances. Seriously? Even with all the crud in the world? Yes. In the rock, paper, scissors of life, joy cuts sorrow, crushes despair, and swallows crud. Grieve first, but joy comes with the morning. These are hard days, but joy is bigger than these days. Joy is not happiness with present circumstances, but harmony with the presence of God and delight in the overflowing of God's joy in us. Joy includes the universe and all its beauty and sorrow. Joy dances with gratitude. Joy plays with hope, which is trust in the unseen. Joy sings with love, which is self-giving for another. Yes, people are suffering and others don't care, but some do. Rejoice. You can rejoice during a pandemic. You can give thanks at a funeral. You can be joyful in prison. You can lament suffering and injustice and still rejoice. For joy is the healing of broken hearts, the breaking of chains, the opening of graves, the coming of God. Christ does not come to make us happy, but to stand with us in the pain of life until joy, like a seed, rises. All is swallowed up in joy. Music I love, but never strain could kindle rapture so divine, so grief assuage, so conquer pain and rouse this pensive heart of mine, as that we hear on Christmas morn upon the wintry breezes borne. Though darkness still her empire keep, and hours must pass ere morning break from troubled dreams or slumbers deep, that music kindly bids us wake. It calls us with an angel's voice to wake and worship and rejoice, to greet with joy the glorious morn which angels welcomed long ago, when our redeeming Lord was born to bring the light of heaven below, the powers of darkness to dispel and rescue earth from death and hell. While listening to that sacred strain, my raptured spirit soars on high. I seem to hear those songs again, resounding through an open sky, which kindled such divine delight in those who watch their flocks by night. Like boat people at the midnight hour, they flee their coast, hiding far from homeland and the massacres of foul men intent on holding power at any cost. I see them arrive on our land's wide shore, to be seized by authority and summarily consigned to remote detention camps, where hope soon turns sour into futility. After 2 harsh years, their case is heard by the keepers of my nation. Mary, Joseph, and the child are dispatched back to King Herod, who strokes his beard with expectation. creche set came complete with stable and a plastic angel. Small, not at all to scale, this white-robed creature with uncertain wings was obviously an afterthought, thrown in to complete the set, otherwise ceramic and hand-painted. Unless, of course, this angel was a last-minute substitute for one which was irresistible to the packer, in which case, somewhere I have an irresistible ceramic angel, dressed gloriously in red, flying or kneeling over somebody else's coffee table as I unwrap the plastic angel. If I could ever bring myself to throw away an angel, it would be this one. This one, with no redeeming features. And yet, each year as I unwrap the plastic angel, I hesitate again to pitch this celestial messenger. I'm reminded of my own lack of glory, my own plastic attempts at celebrating Christmas, my own feeble enunciations. And once again, I place this bit of plastic over the stable. If the plastic angel can get this far, perhaps there's a place in Bethlehem town for me. Shepherds, they say, were the fools of their day, the ones who were butts of the joke. Fred Flintstone with sheep, Homer Simpson asleep, imperfectly ordinary folks. They're nobody famous, just some ignoramuses anyone might string along. Neither pious nor holy, they take things in slowly and often get much of it wrong. So they're out on the down, overlooking the town, feeling vaguely that life's passed them by, just minding their own with a sigh and a moan, when an angel gate crashes their sky. Well, the herdsman took fright at this startling sight. Some rustic expletives were spoken. Well, the seraph looked down at the desolate ground and decided his GPS must be broken. He'd expected to come to a media scrum for a major announcement like this, to communicate to the good and the great the arrival of endless bliss. Celebs should be present, not a handful of peasants at night on a freezing moor. Such a strange target market for a herald to hark at, yet he'd seen something like it before. He'd been sent to appear somewhere north of Judea to an unmarried teenage maid with a tale so alarming he oozed his most charming, "My dear, you must not be afraid." He explained her behavior had put her in favor with the heavenly powers that be, and to tell her bridegroom that he'd have to make room for a special delivery. To the angel's surprise, she looked straight in his eyes and said, "Fine, but I don't know how, because Joseph and I haven't yet." He said, "We don't need to go into that now." He covered his fluster with angelic bluster. "Don't question the method. Believe. He has strategies still to accomplish his will, of which you could never conceive." He was struck by her youth and the staggering truth he had just so abruptly confided when the girl bowed her head and quietly said, "Let it be as the Lord has decided." Now the 9 months are through and the baby is due, and it's time to inform them of why. So here he is, talking to these faces gawking wide open mouthed up at the sky. Gabriel thought back a bit, and it started to fit when considering what it all meant. God's resolute choices of renegade voices were more than an accident. He thought down the ages of prophets and sages whose hopes of success seemed like zero. Abraham, Nehemiah, David, Ruth, Jeremiah, each one an improbable hero. He thought of the stories of unlikely glories, of Joseph sold off without pity, of Gideon the nerd, and Elisha, absurd, and a brass band that blew down a city. For that's how it is, this behavior of his. It's his modus operandi, to choose the obscure or the dull or the poor, or frankly, anyone handy. And at last it was plain to his angelic brain that the God he was messaging for would be nobody now, so that all, anyhow, would be somebody forevermore. Gabriel took out his scroll and he let it unroll and said, "Okay, you guys on the hill, those who've told you the prize was reserved for the wise would appear to have sold you a bill. For a Savior is born this remarkable morn, and his name it is Christ the Lord." Then he added a bit that seemed awfully fit, but that Luke somehow didn't record. "One day this child will see men reconciled in a world that's been turned upside down, where the best will be worst and the last will be first, and a beggar can carry a crown. You'll find him down there in a room cold and bare, and it looks like a pauper's birth. But what's born here is peace that will spread without cease till it reaches all people on earth." And the angels joined in with a heavenly din, "Deo gloria in excelsis," for the child that's now grown, and the grace that's been shown is ours and everyone else's. The old guy said, there's a love that holds this whole shebang together, especially when everything and everyone in it feels a bit banged and busted up. He just turned and said that to me right there in the airport terminal. Complete stranger, never met the guy before. He wore his blue jacket like a badge of quiet respect. Glasses, warm smile, ebony skin. And we were both just sitting there on those blue vinyl seats, looking up at the news, flashing loud across the screens they had hanging there from the ceiling there at Gate C21, like the whole world was suspended right there in this waiting, in this painful, expecting waiting, and the Christmas carols piped in, trying to drown out the news. The music's echoing down to our gate, singing something about how it's the most wonderful time of the year, singing it all through the airport terminals, like they forget that we're all terminal, that we're all grieving, that we've got friends who are fighting with each other and fighting cancer under twinkling little lights, and these speakers that just keep spinning all these Christmas tunes that can seem all out of tune with the howl of our pain. How in the world does a weary world rejoice? We may not know why God doesn't stop all the different kinds of suffering, but we definitely know it's not because God's not interested. God is so moved by our being entangled in suffering that he moved himself into our world and entangled himself in the suffering with us. God with us. God knows suffering. He chose to be born in the middle of a genocide. God knows suffering. He chose to be born as a refugee. God knows suffering. He chose to come from a place where people said no good thing could come from. God knows suffering. He chose to be poor. He chose to absorb pain. He chose to be powerless. God penetrates the ache of our world through the willing yes of a poor unwed teen. In both the incarnation and the resurrection, God reveals himself first to the dismissed and disregarded and dissed. God chose the first witnesses to both his nativity and his nailed hands to be the very people who suffered because they were regarded as small, suspect, sketchy. Because the point is, Christmas is the end of division. Christmas is the beginning of the end of all suffering. Comfort, comfort my people, says your God. The road's been weary, but we can rest beside the road, beside the boarding gate, beside each other, and listen to how the angels sing. The comet casts its own shadows, pausing somewhere north to absorb the midnight dreams of children and luminous refrains of absolute snow. The whole world seems to be up late, existing between presence and some biblical space, out where the bright star begins. The season's breeze sings with the pageants of frost to the sacred structure of the Christmas dawn. And they arrive, these spirits of reason with their language of lights, flaring and feasting on unsleeping prayers. We hear them, their copper voices ghosting the night through the candle flame flicker of trees. White is the color of the heart, they cry, as the world makes merry and the logs burn low. Regard the ash of the Christmas fires. Does it resemble snow? The southern landscape, let's face it, is not intended for Christmas. At least not the storybook Christmas we cut out of red and green construction paper and taped to the windows of Roy Webb Elementary School. Most of the snowflakes I saw until I left home were frozen in place on a cardboard sky with Elmer's glue. I do not love snow. I lived in Boston and New York and came to regard snow as a hard-packed, car-obscuring, finger-numbing, gray and dirty substance. But it was nice at Christmas, till the snowplow come along and shoved it all over top of your Subaru. Down here, I ride the highways and gaze out on the grass that has finally, grudgingly gone dormant, as the voices on the radio, being Elvis and them, try to assure me that it is indeed a season of white Christmases and roasting chestnuts and sleighs. And then a big old boy in a tank top and a sandy hat waves at me from his mailbox, and I am so confused. And that's when I see it. Right there at the side of the road, a single perfect pine or cedar, not too short, not too tall, and I think just for a second that I wish I had a saw. And I know that for me and mine, it is truly Christmas after all. There is no nice way to say it. We are Christmas tree thieves. or used to be, though I am not ruling it out if I see just the perfect one outside a rest stop near Tupelo. I know that larceny has no place in Yuletide, and before you think badly of me, let me explain. It is not like we were rustling sheep from the manger scene outside the city auditorium or absconding with the 3 wise men, which I think would be hard to pawn anyway. It was just trees, and even in that we had scruples. We were not skulking through the lot at the Home Depot at 3 o'clock in the morning or robbing a Douglas fir from the Knights of Columbus. It was just that we were less than particular about property lines. When I was a child, we never bought a tree. We got an axe or a handsaw and went into the woods. It would have been a scene straight off a Christmas card if we had actually gone hunting for one on our own land, which we did not have. But I guess it was poaching in a way, but it seemed harmless. In the deep woods, it was more like we were just thinning the herd rather than stealing. And I doubt if a landowner ever walked up to a stump and said, "I'll see them Bragg boys swing for this." But we knew, my brothers and I, that there was something wrong about it. So we decided to steal from the state of Alabama. We would cruise the bigger roads and highways until we saw one on the state right-of-way. Sliding to a halt in the loose gravel, tires smoking, I would leap from the truck with my axe. 3 to 4 good whacks would usually do it, unless I saw a car coming. Then I froze, trying to look innocent with an axe in my hands. That was a long time ago. I have not stolen a tree from Alabama or anywhere else for 35 years. We buy our trees now and pay what feels like $900 for a tree cut down last 4th of July. A tree that I am afraid to shake too hard lest it look like something Charlie Brown would have. You got a much better quality of tree when it was stole. But I'm too old and stiff now, too fat to jump a ditch or climb a bank. The police would get me sure, and my wife would not come bail me out until after New Year's, maybe Easter. Still, I see them there at the side of the road, and it makes me happy. I guess, if I'm being truthful, those stuck-on paper snowflakes did too. rough Christmas, rough year. So much lacking, so much awry. We've lost the way, lost our center. Pain and weariness under the tree. We're beginning to believe we need saving. This is why you come, and where. In our struggles, to be with us. In our darkness, to be light. The rough manger, you know where it is. O come, beloved. In the hard places, put your arm around us and stay. Christmas is a holiday for friends, however they may be or not related. Remember that the 3 wise kings were strangers in search of one remote, uncanny dream. So may we all be more than we seem, together bound for dark and haunting changes, more lovely for the loves we have created along the lonely paths from means to ends, stumbling towards that star of Bethlehem. It's queer, she said. I see the light as plain as I beheld it then, all silver-like and calm and bright. We've not had stars like that again. And she was such a gentle thing to birth a baby in the cold. That barn was dark and frightening. This new one's better than the old. I mind my eyes were filled with tears, for I was young and quick distressed. But she was less than me in years that held a baby to her breast. I never saw a sweeter child, the little one, that darling one. I told her, when he smiled, you'd know he was his mother's son. It's queer that I should see them so. That time they came to Bethlehem was more than 30 years ago. I've prayed that all is well with them. Lord and Taylor and Klein, Calvin Klein, Cuisinart, Kmart, Polyester, Dollar Stretcher Store, Wide Half Off, Polypro, Plastic Snow, Pre-Lit Trees, 2 IDs, All Sales Vinyl, Simulated Wood Grain Vinyl, Waterproof, Ovenproof, Shockproof, 90-proof, Down the Hatch, Dollar Batch, Doesn't Match, UPS, CVS, JVC, LED, G.I. Joe, TJ Maxx, Xbox, FedEx, Pyrex, Amex, Spandex, Circumflex, Timex, Multiplex, Buyer, Seller, Bomb, Teller, One Day Sale, Bloomingdale's, Limited Time, Amazon Prime, All-Wheel Drive, Party of 5, 5 Gold Rings, Oprah's Favorite Things, London Fog, Swiss Army Scotch tape, Irish mist, English leather, British sterling, sterling silver, lady shake, stick, non-stick, water pick, Panasonic, Kismatic, automatic, anti-static, alkaline, online, 99, Calvin Klein, Ann Taylor, Lord & Taylor, Bergdorf Goodman. Good Lord, what have we done to Christmas? Well, it was the best Christmas pageant we ever had. Everybody said so, but nobody seemed to know why. When it was over, everybody stood around in the narthex talking about what was different this year. There was something special, everyone agreed. They just couldn't quite put their finger on what. Mrs. Wendelken said, "Well, Mary, the mother of Jesus, had a black eye. That was something special. But only what you might expect," she added. She meant that it was the most natural thing in the world for a herdman to have a black eye. But Imogene hadn't hit anybody, and nobody hit her. She had walked into the corner of a choir robe cabinet in a kind of a daze, as if she had just caught on to the idea of God and the wonder of Christmas. And this was the funny thing about it all. For years, I'd thought about the wonder of Christmas and the mystery of Jesus' birth and never really understood it. But now, thanks to the Herdmans, it didn't seem so mysterious after all. When Imogene had asked me what the pageant was about, I said it was about Jesus. But it was more than that. It was about a new baby and his mother and father who were in a lot of trouble. No money, no place to go, no doctor, nobody they knew. And then suddenly, arriving from the east, like my uncle from New Jersey, some rich friends. But Imogene, I guess, didn't see it that way. Christmas just came over her all at once, like a case of chills and fever. So she was crying and walking into furniture. I think it meant that however she herself was, Imogene liked the idea of the Mary in the Bible story pictures, all pink and white and pure looking, as if she never washed dishes or cooked supper or did anything at all except have Jesus on Christmas Eve. But for me, Mary's always going to look a lot like Imogene Herdman, sort of nervous and bewildered, but ready to clobber anybody who laid a hand on her baby. And the wise men will always be Leroy and his brothers bearing ham. When we came out of the church that night, it was clear and cold with crunchy snow underfoot and bright, bright stars overhead. And I thought about the angel of the Lord, Gladys, with her dirty legs and her dirty sneakers sticking out from under her robe, yelling at all of us everywhere, "Hey, unto you a child is born."